Hello, everyone. Welcome to our September webinar. Today's webinar showcase of some of our newest features. We will look at record cards, markdown in cells, the formula timer, and cumulative functions. So immediately following the conclusion of the webinar today, you will receive an email with a link to the unedited recording of this webinar. But you can find all of our webinars on our YouTube channel under the Build with Grist playlist. A recording of this webinar will be there sometime next week. So let's kick it off with our newest feature, Markdown in cells. So you're now able to use Markdown formatting within cells, as you can see on my screen right now. It allows you to add rich text elements like headings, links, lists, as well as apply bold and italic formatting. Now, what you're looking at is a modified copy of our CRM template. You can see that the notes here in the context card and then the notes here in the interactions both have some formatting applied. So if I just double click into it, you'll see that the markdown is just stored as plain text, but certain elements in that text are then interpreted as formatting. So here we see the 2 pound signs. That's going to interpret as a header. So when I click out, I now see that highlights is a header. With that, if you're not familiar with Markdown, I'm just going to cover a few of the common ones that we see on the screen. There is a link to the basic syntax guide. Let me open it and kind of show. So this is the basic syntax. It goes over the Markdown here on the left. It also shows HTML, but we're focusing on Markdown here. So Markdown here on the left, and then what the rendered output is on the right. So as you see, there's 6 different heading levels. Just matches the number of pound or hashtag signs that you type. So let me jump back. Here, highlights has 2 pound signs, so it's going to be a header 2. And when we see that here in basic syntax, that's what it looks like. One thing I do want to point out on this page, this link goes directly to the basic syntax, but at the top here, you'll see extended syntax, and that has even more. And then it has this nice little navigation on the right-hand side that lets you know what these 2 sections cover, and you can jump to different areas. So if you, let me jump back to basic. So if you want to learn how to make lists, you just click on lists. It'll take you to that section and then show you how to do it. It's a great resource. We do link to this within our own Markdown section in our help center. So we kind of covered headers already. The other really frequent thing you're going to use is italicized and bolded. Show this example. So here we just have the 1 asterisk on each side of the text. That'll make the text italicized. 2 is bolded, and then 3 is both. And then you can see it right here. As soon as you click enter, you'll be able to see the formatting applied. And then another cool thing that you can use the Markdown for is for links. When you want text to be converted to a link, you would keep your text goes in the square brackets, like the text you want to click. So Grist is cool. And then your actual link would go inside parentheses. And then now you can click it, it'll open a link. So those are kind of the most useful of the Markdown formatting. But again, definitely check out the basic syntax if you need some guidance. Now, to actually create these Markdown columns is quite simple. Over here in our creator panel, you click I'm clicking into a card right now, and that's why this shows field. It's the equivalent as column in a table widget. This is available in a text column type. And then here you would select the cell form. So if I selected text box, it's going to read everything as text. So I'm going to see all those like formatting bits as text. All you have to do, is change the cell format to hyperlink, and it's now going to use that information to actually format your text. Now we do still have this hyperlink option. This is old. You don't really need it anymore because Markdown does all of it for you. You'll see over here in website column, like that's a hyperlink. It really just takes, if you put a link, it makes it clickable. So you don't really need to use that anymore from now on. You can just use Markdown and just use Markdown syntax to create the link. Let's move on to record cards. I'm going to use another template as an example. So here we have the class enrollment template. Zoom out a little bit. So you know cards as the widget. Here we have a classes card. We have a staff card. We now have record cards in Grist. And sometimes they can be kind of hard to find. If you didn't know that they were there, this might be pretty cool for you. So anytime you have a record selected, you can open that entire record in a card by clicking the space bar. And so now it opens that class information in a card where I can see all of it. I can make some changes. Sometimes your table has a lot of columns hidden. Here we only have 4 columns, but there is more information about this class. So I can click the space bar. I can come in, update any of the information as needed, or just view it if I just wanted to know something about it. Again, space bar, very easy. You can also just click here on this little icon or right click on it, and you can click view as card. Again, the keyboard shortcut is the space bar, so really quick and easy to open that. The other cool thing you can do is open a referenced record as a card. Here in the student column of the enrollments table, this is a reference column, so it's referencing back to that students table. So I see these different students listed. If I wanted to see any information about them, let's say I want to see Elka's contact information, I would normally have to go back to the table and find her name and get the information. You can just click this link icon, and it's going to open that referenced record as a card. And so now I can see Elka's information. I can see her birth date, insurance information. I can also see family information. And so once again, we have another reference column referencing Elka's family. And so within this record card, I can open the other family card. And so now I can see family information. And so you don't have to click quite as far to see related information. Again, we're just clicking that little link icon and we're able to see it. With reference cards, you might not like the format that this is in. This is customizable. So technically you can customize it from this page. You would just open the creator panel, and then you can change the theme. You can also edit the card layout, allowing you to hide fields. You can rearrange. You can change the size by clicking and dragging. I hid the record, but I didn't explain it. To hide, you just click this little eye icon. If you ever need to add a field that's hidden, click add field, and the hidden fields would show up here. You can also add a new field if you needed to from this view, and then save the layout. And so now anytime I open a record card for a student, it's going to have that same layout that I just saved. So you can do that while you're viewing the record card from this page. Another place if you want to just modify them all at once is under raw data. And so with each table, you see this little card icon, and that allows you to edit the record card. And so for here, you'd be able to move everything around and save that layout. So now if I open this classes card somewhere else, it'll still have that view. So here I'm in the classes table. I'll use the space bar to open the record. And now it has that new custom format that I just saved. If you ever want to disable a record card for whatever reason, you don't want someone to be able to open that card, you can disable it. Sometimes it's useful, like if you have a table that only has 1 or 2 columns of data, and this record card is not useful at all, you can disable it. Just click this 3-dot icon under raw data and disable. And then one more thing about record cards. When you modify this layout, this becomes the default layout when you add a card to a new view. So let's see, we'll use family. Open the record card. There we go. And I'm going to dramatically change this so we can see this in action. So I'm just going to leave first and last name. I'm going to save this layout for the record card. And now if I add the families card to a page, I'll just add a new page. We're going to add a card with families. That's the one I just edited. And I add it to the page. It's going to only add whatever fields are there in that format from the record card layout. I can still modify this as needed. I can change the theme. I can add fields back to it. But what you have here, saved here, is going to be the default when you add it to a new page. A question for the Markdown, whether you can edit in a full page or a separate window to edit large notes. You can change the, jump back here. Let's say here, for example, we have 3 widgets. If you want to expand the widget, you can click this expand button and it'll open the widget full size. Let's say you have it in a table. This is a good example. This is a table. Expand that. You can always expand the column. Oops. And double click, and then you have it wider. But those would be the limits to how large you could make it. The next question, can we go back when we go deep in card view references? I'm guessing when you, the question here is, oops. Oh. So if you click the student to open the record card, and then we click the family, can we jump back? No, you would have to click out and then start over. The question is, will reference cards also follow ACL rules, access rules? They will follow access rules. So for example, if a user can only see the student first name and last name and maybe their insurance, but they can't see gender or birth date, they won't see that information in the card. Access rule still applies. So the next improvement I want to show y'all is our formula timer. So this is a modified version of our investment research template. Has different investments towards different companies. And a lot of this is just showing that information. Let me explain the table first. So here we have the company name, the category they are in, and then how much money was invested into them. Now, each line is a different investor. I have that column hidden. So when you see Oscar showing up 5 times, it's because 5 different investors invested into this company. Then here I have a formula column that shows the percent of the category. So like this $75 million is 2.3% of the amount of money invested into the health category. Whereas here, Sigma Care, 2.6 billion is almost 80% of the category. So let me show you this formula. I'll zoom in a little more. I'm going to break this down step by step so we can better understand the formula. So I can show you the formula timer and then how to improve it. So what this column's doing is finding the percent that this value makes. So in order to do that, we have to find the total amount invested into health. And in order to do that, we have to sum all of these values in this table. So here we're just looking up at the investments table. We want to look up all records where this category matches. So category equal, category. And then specifically, we want the amount. Now, we want to sum all of these amounts. So that is the total amount in this category that was invested. Now we want to find what percent this amount makes. And so that's just amount over this sum. And then that finds the percent. We just change the column type to percent. And then we get the same number. Mine's just rounding. Okay. So that is what that formula is doing. We want to be able to improve our formulas, and that's where the formula timer comes in handy. The formula timer can be found in the document settings page here on the left. You click start timing, and then we have two options here. Start timing would just start a timer, and then as you work in the document and formulas are calculated, then it'll check those formulas that are used. Personally, I like the time reload. It just reloads the entire document and it forces all of the formulas to run, which then allows you to time every single formula in the document. It's much more efficient. This is nice if you're looking at very specific workflows within your document. So we will do a time reload. Again, it's just doing a hard refresh of my document and timing all of the formulas. And so then it just lists them out. At first, it's not incredibly helpful. You'd have to scroll through. The best thing to do right off the bat is to sort by this total time column so you can see the formulas that are taking the most time. We just sort it Z to A. And we can see that our, this is the percent of category, takes almost a second and a half. Now we tell everyone, if your formula is taking over a second, it is worth looking into to see if you can improve the formula. So obviously we know this formula can be improved. That's why it's in our example. Keep in mind when you run the formula timer, if you click away from this and you go into another page, it loses this table. So if you're trying to save this information, take a screenshot when you're using your own formula timer so that you have that information. But I know that this is the only one I'm looking at, so I can jump back and lose my formula timer results. It's okay. So we want to improve this particular formula. And add a new column. And we're just going to name it the same thing, except now this will be our faster one, and then we'll be able to compare. So in this formula, in every single line, we're running this sum. And that's a large calculation to do. It has to look up every record in this table that has the same category, then pull those amounts, and then summarize them, which is a lot of steps. So previously I had it filtered for the health category. So let me just use that as an example. Here we have 93 investments for the health category. So it's summing 93 amount values the same way, but in 93 records. And so we're doing this calculation, this intense calculation over and over. And so that's the part we want to improve. Because it's doing a sum and it's finding this category, what we could just do is create a summary table that's doing the same thing. And then just call for that sum the one time, and it'll greatly speed this up. Okay, so we're just going to add a summary table. So to do that, you just click the summation icon, and we're going to group by category, which is essentially doing the same thing as the lower portion of that formula. So here we go. This is the sum amount. So easy. It's done it once. So let's just look at health real quick. So that's the amount we need for health. We can just refer to that instead of the lower portion of this fraction. And it'll save us quite a few steps within calculation and saving us time. So we're going to this is our fast version of the formula. Now, instead of looking up all the records in this table where the category matches, we just want to find the single value in the investment summary table. So as soon as I start typing investments, it's going to start suggesting all of these other things. Summary lets you know that it's a summary table. The summary table that we want is just grouped by category. And so we just look for category. And then here we just want one record. We just want where the category is equivalent, and that's just one record. So we can do lookup one. It's going to suggest category, and then we can click this category. That's the match we want to do. So for this row, it's health. The category is health, and so it's going to look up this category, health, and then pull this amount. Okay, so far we're pulling the correct amount. Now we need to do the actual percent calculation, which is just amount over this value. And we'll convert that to numeric and percent. Give it 2 decimal places. And now we have the same number, but this is just looking up a single value rather than doing a whole calculation with a bunch of values. So we can compare this now, again, using that formula timer. Sort again, Z to A, so we see the highest ones first. So here's our slow one again. We haven't deleted it, so it's still there, taking up time. And then here is our percent of category fast. A huge time difference. So here, 1.5 seconds. Here, 0.06 seconds. Because we cut out finding all of those values in the table and summing them, instead we're just summing them all once in the summary table, finding that value and using it in our formula. So that's just one example of a way to improve a formula, everyone's going to have different formulas, so different ways to improve them. The key thing here is that this formula timer exists. If you do start noticing slowness within your document, this is a great place to go. See if there's some formulas that can be improved, because if you have 100,000 records and your formula is inefficient, that's going to take a ton of time. If you can make it a little more efficient, you can save a couple seconds. I have seen documents that take 5 seconds to load, and that's a significant amount. And you can cut it down to 1 second or 2 seconds and save yourself a 3-second load time every time. Questions, there should be an easy way to write complex Python functions. Sometimes the easy solution is to create another table that hosts like this sum. For this example, the better solution was to create a table and just store that single record there. You don't even have to view the table. I can hide that table, and my formula still works. So you don't have to have these extra tables in view, and it just works in the background. Sometimes, though, if you do have a complex Python formula, sometimes it's just the way you rewrite it would make an improvement, not necessarily having to create another table. If you do have a formula where you're like, oh, this one's taking some time and you're not quite sure how to improve it, feel free to post in our community. And our dev team is in there, and they can certainly provide some suggestions on how to improve some formulas. The question, the formula timer sums up the time taken for a formula to calculate all the values for a table. Correct. So anywhere you see a formula column, anytime your document loads, it recalculates all of these formulas. And so that's what the formula timer is forcing. And so anywhere you see this equal sign, the formula timer is going to calculate that. So like here you see an equal sign. That means this column is included in the formula timer. Probably pretty low because it's not doing too much. Can the formula timer take a long time? Yes. I have had it where the formula has taken several minutes. It depends on the document, but it's going to take as long as it takes to run your formulas. If you highlight the entire column, it'll tell you how many seconds it took total to calculate. So like here, 2.4 seconds. So this specific run took 2.4 seconds to calculate all my formulas. Now, if your formulas take a really long time, that can get up there, and it has. I've gotten emails from customers and have had to run the formula timer, and it does take over a minute, sometimes longer. And if you are really far up there with your numbers, you could have it where it takes so long that it crashes. And when that's happening, obviously, there's some formulas that will need to be fixed. Typically, that's if there's errors in your formula and it just keeps trying and trying and trying to calculate, and there's no like cancel. I will share our Help Center article on the formula timer. It goes through all these steps, including sorting the total time column, which is just a little piece that you don't want to forget. So I'll share that now. The question is, if you're splitting a formula into 2 formulas, this means we need to add both times then to compare it with the old slow one. Isn't that correct? Yes. So for example, I just created a summary table of the investments table to then do that sum. And so we would have to add that to, here we go, category. So let me jump back so we can see. I created this summary table. So we're doing a calculation here to calculate the amount for each category. But then we're also doing this calculation here to calculate the percent of each category. And so those 2 formulas basically make up our old slow one. And so if I run that formula timer again, I can look at both of those. Well, for this example, we'll see that's a huge difference still, because the sum for each category is still only being done once for each category, rather than like for health, it was being run 93 times on top of the 93% calculations. Okay, sort that. Okay, so this is our slow one, again, about a second and a half. And then we'll use this example because this is from the investments summary table grouped by category. And so I think this is the calculation for the whole summary table, which is 0.13 seconds to create the summary table. So all of our categories takes 0.13 seconds to calculate the sums. And then we had our fast percent of category, which is 0.07. So 0.2 seconds to do the calculations that used to take 1.5 seconds. Great questions, guys. Okay, so moving on to what might be our coolest update is cumulative functions. So cumulative functions now exist in our function reference guide. Show that here. Okay, so these three, next, previous, and rank, are our cumulative functions. So today we're just going to focus on previous, but next works the same way. It just looks at the next function rather than the previous function. And then rank allows you to rank your records based on some criteria. So once you understand previous, you'll understand the other two and how to set them up pretty well. They're very similar, just returning different things. So this document here is just capturing revenue on a daily basis. And what we want is to know this cumulative revenue. So, every day in the year, we're collecting this revenue. How much revenue have I generated in the entire year so far? And that's what we're going to generate. That's what this column is. And that's what we're going to cover how to do. Let me delete this so we can start fresh. So to do this, we'll want to look at the previous day's revenue and then add it to today's total revenue to create a cumulative. And that's why we have to use that previous function. So just by starting to type previous, it will start suggesting the previous function, and it tells you how to set it up. So we have rec, we can set a group by parameter, and we can set an order by parameter. And we'll walk through all of those today. Oops. So we're going to come back to group by. We're going to skip it for now, and we'll focus on order by. This tells you, okay, in what order are we setting these so it knows what the previous record is. If you're just trying to look at the previous record by ID, that's an option. For this specific example, we want the previous day. So let's say today's the 28th of February. I want the 27th of February. That would be my previous record. So what we can do is order by day. And day is going to be in quotations. Day is the column name here that we're going to order by. And if I just enter that, it's red because I have this as a numeric column. What it's doing is returning a record. So we're looking for the previous record if the order is by day. And so revenue 423, I'm going to assume is this one. If you want to check, you can add ID as a column. And that's that number that it's returning is the record ID. So yeah, here we go, 423. So we can confirm we are returning the previous record. The question is, how does it know you're talking about revenue and not some other column? Right now, it doesn't even know we're talking about revenue. So right now, it is simply returning the previous record. If I turned this into a reference column, that would show you that it's returning this entire thing. But what it's noting is the ID. This is the ID, and this is the record it belongs to. And so what we need to do is tell it what part of the record we want. So specifically, we want the value that we're about to calculate, which is cumulative revenue. So you want the same column, cumulative. And so right now that's $0 because I'm not doing anything with it at this point. So what we want to do is we want to take that previous revenue, whatever yesterday's value was, and then add today's total revenue to it. So we'll just assign this to a variable. Previous revenue. And then I can actually do my math problem, which is just total revenue plus the previous revenue. And you don't have to do this on separate lines. It's how I prefer to do it. I feel like you can see the math better for learning. And there we go. So now, like yesterday, again, we're going to go with that. Today is February 28th. If yesterday's revenue was 3.3 million and we're adding $3,586 to that, which gets our new cumulative revenue, $3,310,000. So again, you're adding the previous day's revenue, cumulative revenue, to today's total revenue to get the new cumulative revenue value. Now, what this is doing is just calculating this forever. So maybe not totally useful knowing your cumulative revenue over all time. What's typically more useful is knowing your cumulative revenue for the year or perhaps the month and being able to compare that to the year before, the month before. And that's where that group by value comes in handy. So here I've already created a year column. It just pulls the year value from this date value. And so we have values in 2023, and then we also have some in 2022. We want cumulative revenue to reset on January 1st, which you can see it's not doing that right now because we didn't group. We just said if just add the cumulative revenue and the total revenue day by day. Now we'll add that group by option. And we'll do the same thing. You just tell it what column you want to group by, and that's year. So we want all of 2023 to be grouped together and all of 2022 to be grouped together so that my cumulative revenue starts over on the first of the year. And so now we see that December 31st is unchanged. But here on January 1st, the cumulative revenue is the same as the current day's revenue. But then we start adding. So now on January 2nd, we have the two values together. And now we're at 14,000 for cumulative revenue for the year 2023. And then it keeps adding and adding. Now, if I were to add a new value for today, Because I don't have any other data for 2024, it's just going to show my cumulative revenue as the revenue from today. Let me just walk through that whole formula one more time, so we can just let it sink in on how to create it. So let me add a new column. Okay. So again, we're using that previous function. And then as we see, it requires rec. And then you have the group by and the order by parameters. We'll just do all of it all at once since we've already discussed the group by and how that works. So again, you just have rec. We want to group by year. Type. And when you're entering the column names, make sure the capitalization is correct as well. So we're grouping by year so that we're only adding revenue within 2023 or only adding revenue in 2022. And then the order by is going to be our day because we want to add in cumulative order, which is adding yesterday to today and so on and so on. Okay. So that's just our previous function. So that's just going to return our previous record. We need to use dot notation to tell it what from that record we want. Specifically, we want the cumulative revenue value. And then what do we want to do with that value? We want to add it to today's revenue. Let's add a plus here. So this is the cumulative revenue from yesterday, and we want to add it to today's total revenue. And then, of course, you can change your column type to numeric, make it a currency, and then we've got the same amount. Okay, so let me share the link to the function reference on this. The link is going to take you to our function reference section here, which shows the next cumulative function, the previous, which is what we just covered. Previous also, let me zoom out a little bit. It has a good write-up of how it works and what you need for it. So that's kind of our, instead of having a help center article, this is where the information is for this function. And then rank is in there as well. And that has a little more of a write-up. That is our webinar for today. I know we ran a little long, but if you guys have any questions, I can certainly stay on to answer them. Then one of the questions is, can you group by 2 columns? You can, yes. So here is the formatting for it. Okay. So if you're grouping by 2 columns, use parentheses. You're still going to have the column name in quotations, a comma between them. Make sure your capitalization is correct. There you go. And so now this cumulative revenue is resetting every month. So if I go back to February 1st, and so the cumulative revenue and the total revenue are equivalent, again, because it's resetting every month. Great question. Excellent. Well, if you guys do have any questions that you come up with while you're using these new features on your own, feel free to post them in our community forum. I'll share that link once more. And then again, if you're looking for the examples, I will post this I'll post this recording on YouTube sometime next week. And then in the description, I will include links to all of the examples for you. I'll answer some of the questions that were submitted during our registration. The first question was, will you ever support live connections to existing databases? Great question. There's no plans to support this in the near future, but one day it definitely would be nice. And then the second question, would love to see some conditional formulas, how these are handled in the system. So I'm not quite sure if you're looking for like conditional formatting or like an if-else type of formula. I can show you both. So let's say we'll start with conditional formatting as the example. Here in the interactions table, let me open the whole table. We have interactions, and each interaction has a type. Let's say we want to highlight to-do tasks. We want to make sure that whole row changes color so that we recognize that this is a task we need to get done. Now that can be done here in the right-hand creator panel. So row styles are listed under the table tab because they apply to the entire table. But you also have column conditional formatting, which is under the column tab. You'll see add conditional style. The difference here, if you're adding it under the column tab, meaning add conditional style right here, it's just going to apply to the single column. So only that to-do cell would change colors rather than the entire row. For this example, we just want the entire row. There's a little shortcut here, so we can just click open row styles and it opens the table tab for us. So we add a style, and this is where we add the conditional formula. It's already an if statement. We see the if up here. And if type, I can click on type and it'll enter it into my formula here. If type equals, and then these choices are strings. So we have to enter the string into quotations. And you need it to match exactly because here we have a capital T, capital D, and so we need that in our formula as well. And then we can just change the styling. You have the fill, you have the text. You can also change the formatting of the text up here, but we'll just add some yellow. And so that's how conditional formatting works. You would type a conditional formula into the box to make that happen. Now, let's say you just wanted to add a column with a conditional statement. Example here. So to enter a formula, you click the equals key and you already start entering the formula. We do have this AI assistant. You can click on that and you just tell it what you want and it'll write the formula for you. But while I'm here, I can teach you how to do the formulas. And let's just say we want to do the exact same thing. So if the type is to do, we just want it to return true. You would do if, you can click type, and then it's the same formula. So if type equals to do, and again, we're putting that in quotations because it's a string, make sure your capitalization is equivalent. You end with the colon, and then we tell it what we want it to return. So you could return a string, you can return true or false. Let's say you want to return some text, get this done. And we could leave it at that. If you want, you could have an else statement. And we can return, let's just return, great job. And so if, oh, here we go. So because this is a to-do task, type equals to do, it's returning get this done. Anything else is just returning great job. So that's just an example of a conditional formula. If you have a specific formula that you're trying to get help with, please post to our community forum. I will share the link. Well, thank you guys so much for joining today. I appreciate you all being here. Again, if you have any further questions, definitely post to our community forum, and we will see you guys next month. Have a great one.